Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the City of Waterloo Special Council meeting of Monday, November 6, 2017. It's now 6:30 p.m. From Council, could I have a disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Seeing none, we now move into all our committee presentations, and this is the time when we take offer a chance for everybody to come in and report on all the citizens committees and what they've achieved over the year and speak a bit about the future. And I think this is a very special night for all of us here at Council because we know that there are so many volunteers who want to help the City of Waterloo be so much better, and we're so pleased to be able to leverage the experience that you all have. So with that, the first one up is the Audit Committee Annual Update with Noel Butler. Welcome, Noel.
And just as I know you're all very familiar with it, but just as a brief background, our committee was established in 2003 with 4 objectives: review of bylaw compliance in respect to purchase of goods and services, financial reporting, an external audit process review, budgetary commentary and advice on policy, and financial policy advice. Background, it's a very specific composition on this committee. There's an accountant, a lawyer, an engineer, and 2 senior business leaders and a risk analyst. That's called out in our terms of reference. And we also have some non-voting members: Mayor, Chair of the Financial Committee, CIO and CFO. So for 2017, I'll very quickly run through a couple of highlights. First one, we increased our transparency to the city. All of our minutes are now published from all of our meetings. Up until this point in time, they were never published. Within the last year, we've started to do that, and all of our agendas. We also done some detailed work around recommending remuneration for elected officials at the next council starting in October 2018. And then we had some review and commentary and results of the city's Employee Code of Conduct and Ethics Committee. 2017, we also reviewed the 2016 financial statements. So specifically, what does that mean? It means prior to the audit, we met with the auditors, reviewed the audit plan and scope, and then we reviewed the auditor's management letter and internal control improvements from the findings during that audit. We also reviewed and provided commentary on the Uptown Community Improvement Plan, SIP, providing financial incentives for Uptown businesses and investors. We provided review and recommendation of an amended purchasing process in order to control scope of additional work attached to a base bid scope. We provided review and commentary on major capital procurements, RFQ and RFPs for compliance to the purchasing bylaw, probably one of the most common things that comes across our table. And then we provided review and commentary on the 2016 year-end capital report, and also some commentary on the financial dashboard that's held on the city's website. For the next year, 4 sort of key points moving forward, subject to council support. We've been a committee since 2003. We want to, in the next year, use our committee and staff, review the terms of reference, modernise them, and set us up for success at the next council. We want to continue to provide commentary and oversight on financial systems, policies, process, programs, and procurements. It's a very busy committee. And highlight the staff and council emerging trends that may enhance financial sustainability. And then for the final year, we're getting your help to appoint a new member to join us because we lost one of our members. But thank you for your support over the year.
Well done. Thank you, Noel. And although the presentation's over, we'll have questions and comments from our councillors, but we're going to have a little reception afterwards. I know you've had a busy day, a lot of travel, but for you and for all the others in the council chambers, if you're able to stay for reception afterwards, that'd be nice. And if now I look for questions or comments from council. Councillor Whaley.
Thanks for your presentation and for your hard work this year. You know, in 2003, the Audit Committee came about because we needed an extra set of eyes after the Rim Park fiasco. We wanted to have a separate group other than council looking at all the important fiscal decisions we make, just to make sure we were doing it right.
I think it was a wise decision, and I think everyone on that committee takes that sort of role very seriously. And
I know you do, and it's been remarkable, the service that you provided and the hours that you put in. But here we are 15 years later, I don't think there's another council that I know of that has an audit committee. The work has typically fallen on the responsibility of council. The unusual circumstances of Rim Park had us create the audit committee, which has brought tremendous value. Those extra set of eyes have been so important to us. But is there a sunset date for you guys? Is there a time where the citizens can say, okay, council, here we are 15 years after Rim Park, you're now ready to take back the full responsibility of decision making?
There's nothing in our terms of reference that talks about sunset. There's nothing in the SILS report that I'm aware of when they set it up to do that. And I would think the answer would be when governance is at a stage where any type of auditing is not adding value anymore, then we could sunset a committee like this. But I think there's going to be value from having that objective review from outside of council going forward. And I think the City of Toronto does have an audit committee as well. I think there has been in the past some belief that the only city with an audit committee is Waterloo. I'm not so sure that's the case now. May have been back in 2003. City of Toronto definitely has an audit committee.
You're doing a great job, Noel. Thank you to you and your team.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I might look to the chair of the FSP committee to give comment as well.
Thanks, Mayor, and thank you, Noel, for coming. And you see you had at least one committee member sauntering with you, Rennie in the back.
Yes.
Rennie hiding in the back as per usual. He's doing these scenarios. But certainly neither she or anybody else around the audit committee is shy in any discussions on matters, and we appreciate the value that's added to many of the conversations that come before audit, and have an opportunity to provide advice and support as council, who's always retained the final decision-making authority on all these items to make decisions additionally informed by some outside perspective on some key matters. So appreciate the work that the committee's doing, and certainly in my eyes, and I'm not hearing differently from council, the next steps that you've got ahead of you for next year are in line with where we need to see a lot of work. And I would encourage my colleagues to let the mayor and I or Noel directly know any ideas in particular that you find valuable or would find useful to see from audit committee. That's a conversation I think we could benefit from as we do a terms of reference review, to make sure that we continue to add the most value in the most places and not spend time in places that we're not adding value. I think everybody values spending time on things that matter. So we'll appreciate feedback as we do this review next year.
Seeing no further questions, thank you very much, Noel, for coming.
Okay, thank you very much.
Next up is the Advisory Committee on Culture. So welcome to Kulda Bakker and Alvin Souzer, please.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, Council. Tonight's presentation is a collaborative effort of the Advisory Committee on the Culture. First of all, I would like to recognize the members of the committee who are present here. I have John Clout here, and I have Alvin Souzer, my colleague, who is going to do half of the presentation with me. And then we have the staff. The mandate, can you set this?
Yes, do you want me to?
Yeah, please. I'm new to all the protocol here, sir, so forgive me. So the mandate of the committee is to advise the council and staff on cultural development in the city of Waterloo, participates in the city initiatives or projects or committees deemed to have cultural impact, acts as an informed resource of staff and council by responding to requests, information or advice sent directly to the ACC by the council or staff, act as a liaison between council and the cultural committee and anticipating the responding to the information needs of both, initiates and pursues opportunities and enhances the cultural environment of the city, participates in monitoring and regularly volunteers all plans and policies which are expected to have an impact on the cultural life of the community, and acts as a champion for cultural plan implementations. The composition of the committee is up to 8 generally recruited members with an active interest in cultural activities, with at least one being a faculty or staff member of the local post-secondary institution with a focus in the area of culture. And then we have the nominees from specific organizations, a representative of the Canadian Clay and Glass Gallery. It can be a board member or a staff, a representative of the Waterloo Community Arts Center, either a board member or a staff, a representative of the Waterloo Library, again, could be a board member or the staff, representative of the Municipal Heritage Committee, representative of the UPTOWN Vision Committee, representative of the Waterloo Economic Development Committee, a member who will be representative of the Waterloo Historical Society, either a board member or the staff. The 2017 highlights: building expertise with presentations from arts organization, joint regional advisory committee meetings, WMRC expansion consultation, economic development, strategic planning development, festival hut consultation, support and amplify the cultural summit, strategic plan link is corporate excellence, economic development, and the cultural plan link, goal number 6, foster collaboration in the cultural sector. And I think there's one more.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, this is yours.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
That's right.
I'll ask my colleague Evelyn to take over. Thank you.
Thank you, Kuldip. So just to continue on the highlights, the city culture plan was developed with significant input from the local community. The Advisory Committee on Culture provides input each year on the development of culture report card to assist with the communication of the implementation progress. And to continue of some of our highlights, the committee has been active this year providing feedback on a number of initiatives that impacted public and green spaces, such as providing feedback to Waterloo Park Central Promenade and participating in the development of the regional placemaking strategy. More onto this, we also assisted the unveiling of Fish Out of Water at the Waterloo Service Center, recommended acceptance of donation of Landscape Color Field 17, which is the visitor center, reviewed 2 temporary public art applications, assisted with the development of terms of Mary Ellen Park RFP, supported recommendations of PAC in 2016 to see the human quilt de-excisionized. I also would like to give a little bit information about the PAC, which is the Public Art Committee, which reviews the scope and terms of reference for each new proposed public art project, ensures application of established procedures and guidelines for each selection process, assists with coordinating the selection of project juries, advises and promotes communication and outreach of the public art policy to the community, and finally advises council on proposed gifts, donations, and bequests to the city in accordance with established guidelines. And now, looking at the 2018, there are some highlights that we would like to provide on what we're going to be accomplishing. Assisting with the development of community art opportunities as part of the larger public art program and neighborhood strategy implementation, assisting with the development of public art master plan, assisting with public art acquisition process, assisting with development of a festivals and event strategy, and assisting with development of strategies to address capacity building. So these are the outlines of the 2018. And I think that concludes our presentation. If there are any questions that we can answer.
Thank you very much, Alvin. Do you have questions before I ask for Councillor Veith to make some comments? Questions? Seeing none. Councillor Veith.
Through you, Mayor Jaworski, thank you for your wonderful presentation. It was excellent and well presented. And yeah, thank you for all you do for the committee. And I know there's lots, that's quite a list of things coming up. And I met with staff today, and yeah, we went over like what's coming up for the new year, and it's lots going on. And I want to thank you and the committee for all you do, for coming to the 8 o'clock a.m. meetings once a month. And yeah, so enjoy the rest of your term, and thank you again for coming.
Thank you. We enjoyed a lot.
Thank you. Next up, the Municipal Heritage Committee. Nick Lawler, please. Welcome, Nick.
Hello. Thank you for having me here today to speak about our committee. I'm the chair, Nick Lawler, and behind me in a few different rows are the members of our committee, including the support staff, Michelle Lee. And a new council member this year is Brian Burke, after yeoman's work by Councillor Feith. So there's the names of our committee, and we have a diverse group of engineers and architects and archaeologists and historians and real estate agents and people with a wide breadth of knowledge and experience, and have a passion for built heritage. So I won't bother reading through these, but essentially these are our terms of reference of why we exist, and council is required by the Ontario Heritage Act to consult a committee of people on heritage matters. So our role is basically to consult the council on anything that comes up. And while we do have some authority delegated to us through some local bylaws, essentially the council make the final decisions on the important ones, and listen to us hopefully on what our recommendations might be. So this year we had 15 heritage permit applications, many of which were difficult and complex, and had lots of things going on. They were mostly located in our One Heritage Conservation District, Albert McCormick. And city staff, in consultation with myself, issued 13 of those 15 through a delegated authority process. So basically, if the permit is considered in compliance with good heritage practice and minor in nature, then the permit can be issued within 2 or 3 days after the applicant applies, which makes things very efficient, which makes the public very happy. So I did the math, and that's an 87% of the permits were deferred from you, so you only had to deal with 13%, because I know your time is very valuable. So we want to always make sure you guys are dealing with the most important issues that come up with heritage, and we kind of manage the more minor details. So one of the big things we did this year was the final tally was 68 properties in the Mary Allen neighborhood were added to our non-designated municipal heritage list, which basically is a list of properties that the Heritage Committee has an interest in, and this allows us just to have a conversation if a demolition application was ever brought up. It does not prevent the owner from making any changes to the exterior or the interior. It only kind of kicks in when there is a redevelopment application or a demolition application. So these are kind of some landmark buildings, and actually none of these were on that list of the 68, but these are some landmark buildings within the Mary Allen neighborhood that help kind of define it as one of our more important neighborhoods in the Uptown. So there's the Herb Kumpf House, which is right on King Street, and of course 222 Mary, and the St. Louis Church and little convent you can see just in the foreground there. So these are kind of the landmark properties that when we looked at Mary Allen and decided to list these 68, this is our beginning of a collection of why this neighborhood is important to the city's heritage and to its culture. One major accomplishment we had was we designated 3 and 5 Father David Barrett Drive, which is the old Seagram's barrel, or I forget what it's officially called, basically the warehouse, and we also protected a view cone. So this view you're seeing here is also protected under the Act, so would prevent any sort of high-rise development in front of it, because we believe that this view you see is on like every marketing brochure from the City of Waterloo issues, and it's a very important part of Uptown. And so that's when the applicant from the condo board came, and that was something they wanted to protect and something we felt was important to preserve. Also, the cultural heritage landscape study is underway, and so you ask, well, what is a cultural heritage landscape? Well, basically it's what you're looking at here. You're talking about views and collections of whether it be buildings or landscape that help define something within our municipality's cultural heritage. So this is actually in the Conservation and Heritage District, the Albert McCormick thing there. But there's some other ones too. There's 30 members of the public attended a public meeting a few weeks ago to kickstart the discussions with the consultants who are looking after this study. And they'll be preparing some information. They'll be working with staff. They're working with our committee, with other committees to try to put this report together. So some other landscapes we have, this of course is Waterloo Park, so I'm sure this will kind of be part of the discussion of what Waterloo Park means to our community. There's the Laurel Creek Conservation Area, I just picked this out, that's another good example of there's the whole city. I mean, there's King Street, the old corridor road, and you know, it's a fascinating kind of process that we're starting, is looking at all the different landscapes and collections of things within this city. It doesn't mean buildings, it could be just rolling hills or parks, and so it's a very exciting time to kind of assess what we have and going forward. If you need context in the photo, we're there. So, right there. It's a lot of stuff going on. So, where is this all headed? So in Kitchener, you've probably heard of it in the paper and all that, there's the Innovation District, very successful downtown redevelopment happening in Kitchener, and it has a lot of inclusion of their old industrial heritage buildings that have been used to trigger this economic development in Kitchener. So like I said, these factories, they're called brick and beam buildings, have been a very attractive space to technology companies. They feel like, you know, the young kids these days are looking for that type of space to work in. They like to live and work in the same spot. So this is all triggering a kind of a revolution happening, not just in Kitchener, but all across Canada, is using these historic buildings to trigger some redevelopment of downtown areas. So there's the Lang Tannery building, a very successful redevelopment down there. There's a new Google building, so this is on Bright Up, and right kind of across the road there, this is the Huck Glove proposed development that's happening there. Now, I don't want to spend the whole meeting talking about Kitchener, so because this is Waterloo. So where are we headed? So what happened in Kitchener is there was a willingness for council to list buildings on this non-designated register I spoke about, and that allowed a conversation to happen when a development proposal came through. Because we had that list was in place, the developer could have a conversation with the city staff, the Heritage Committee, actors who are involved in this, and they could have a discussion of what that development, you know, might look like. So that was a good piece that they had to leverage some of these buildings. And so courage in the past by past councils reap rewards in the future. And even before a fully realized version was there, it wasn't like these things were already on the table. It's like they had to take the courage in the past to preserve something so someone else could have the bright idea. Well, we did that too. So the Seagam bonded warehouse, which is where Shopify is currently located, the internal racking system was actually designated in 2002 and protected under Part 4. And just some history, it was constructed way back when. It held whiskey barrels up until 1992 when the distillery was closed. And as most of you know, it was converted into a museum and then eventually into offices later down the road. And Shopify Plus has been there since 2016. And I'll kind of roll through some of these pictures from a recent expose in the Globe and Mail about why this place was very sought after by Shopify to kind of incubate their tech guys. So this is, of course, the racking system inside, and they have all these internal pathways, which are really cool. You can walk amongst all the barrels and all the timber structure. There's some very cool kind of common areas and kitchen areas, again, using these barrels to kind of speak to what this formal use of the building is, and then these guys are thinking about future technology, and it's good juxtaposition that these type of businesses like to use. Again, another one, just a cool kick back and do what you got to do in some weird chair. So another one, which another success we had was the Garfield Glove building, the Waterloo Legion building, as you may know it. So again, being repurposed as a brick and beam office space just down the road, and there's the rendering of what it'll look like when it's done. So this was constructed between 1913 and 1926, like I said, as Garfield Glove, and the Spielberg Shoe Company was on the upper floor. And the Legion was in there for a very long time. And again, looking for this brick and beam, the developer sought after development, and it represented one of the last remaining spaces that this could be done in Uptown. And because there was some heritage designations and listing on the property, we were able to have a conversation about what needs to be done to this and how it could be preserved. So it's listed on the non-designated register, as I mentioned, and it'll be open in hopefully 2018. So more heritage buildings. I'm not going to go too far into this because I'm running out of time, but there's the Hoffman Wagon-Ass Company building, also known as the Brick Brewery building, and Circa is under construction right now. So again, the Brick Brewery building was listed. We had a conversation, and we're going to make hopefully something nice come out of it. And the Communitech building, the former Ontario Mutual Life, former Waterloo Police Station, again, on the list, designated. We were able to kind of work through the developer on these issues. So, as we know, the city is growing and developing at a blistering pace. Consideration of heritage is it has to form any part of a good urban planning strategy. And we only can advise council. So while we have all these passions and all this experience, really you are consulting us, and we tell you kind of what our thoughts are on this heritage. But it's the people around the horseshoe here that have to make the decisions and have the courage to preserve these things if we want to have a future on heritage. So the citizens look to you to provide that type of leadership, and we hope that we can be part of an active partner in this goal, and we can help preserve the heritage of our city. So thank you for listening to me, and take any questions if you have.
You must enjoy serving on that committee. You have a lot of enthusiasm.
I have enthusiasm. I do enjoy it. Yeah.
Okay, before I turn it over to Councillor Burke, any questions from Councillor O'Reilly, please?
Fascinating presentation, Nick. My years sitting in this chair, I'm used to dealing with heritage buildings. I'm used to dealing with heritage neighborhoods, sometimes heritage trees. But the idea of heritage views is really kind of a brand new field for us as a council, for our community. And I think it's kind of like a brand new field for the heritage business that you're in. So can you think of I get the beautiful vista that you're trying to catch looking up Willis Way to see that remarkable Seagam's building there, capturing that view and making sure that going forward it's there for future generations. Are there other views that you have in mind that capture your interests that we can begin to think about as a community?
Well, there's a couple off the top of my head, and they're actually outside of Uptown. The one is the farmhouse at the North Sports Fields at University of Waterloo. I think it's the Brubaker House. So potentially, who knows what could happen to all those lands if the university wants to, add medical schools and all this sort of thing. But that the presence of the sports fields allows that vista to remain, because that house would have been put there for a certain purpose to kind of, whether it be farmland or, I'm not clear on the history right now, but that's one view that could be thought of. Travel the sun to cool the building, as well as provide that vista in front of the school for the students. So those are a couple of views that we're interested in.
You talked about the blistering pace of development in the community. So I'm wondering if you have a view that you want to capture as a heritage group, what does that do about all the development potential all the way around it? Does that essentially free all the view, the space in the view? Who decides what the view is, what the parameters of the view are? It seems so complicated and so limiting in so many ways with respect to the blistering pace of Waterloo moving forward.
Yeah, and I think I speak for the committee when we say we don't want to see development stop. We're not looking to flip a switch and say, we're done, that's it. We want development to work, because a lot of the heritage buildings obviously are low-rise. So let's accommodate those views so that as a citizen's walking down the road, they're not just seeing this giant tombstone beside the heritage building. Well, let's have that tombstone designed in such a way that it complements that building. And those are the kind of things that we're going to use heritage development as a way to affect the planning and affect the architecture, so that when it's all said and done, we have this beautiful high-tech city, but we have like a heart. There's something there that still speaks to where we came from, and as opposed to just everything shiny new in glass. So that's kind of what our motivation is, I think. Okay.
Thank you. I'll now ask Councillor Burke to say a few words.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. And I don't think you played this minor consultative role that you almost trot out there. You just talked about having a heart, and I think that committee provides that heart. And it's an eye-opening experience to be on that committee for someone who doesn't come from that background like me, and to start to understand the passions and the belief that all of you have, and then the expertise that you bring is remarkable. And when we talk about the cultural landscape views on my 5K walks around much of Waterloo, after having those discussions, I can walk down the street and say, that is something that means something to not only the people that live in this neighborhood, and I encourage people to get out and take a look at what's here. It's really, really remarkable, and the work that you do in the committee to try to keep that front and center so we still have that heart is really, really remarkable. And I might have told you 5 or 6 years ago that, these are, let's blow the old buildings up. They don't mean anything, but they do. And they mean an awful lot. And your work on that committee is very strong, and I think it does provide much of the heart, because we're going to see more and more of this development pressure on these buildings as the years go by. And I can envision that this committee will have a particular voice in making sure that we keep that heart beating. So thank you for the work that you've done and the work that you're going to do in the future. And he really does enjoy this committee.
Yeah. I can assure you the passion is also shared amongst the other committee members. They just vote me up here to speak. But yeah, no, we do enjoy our time.
Okay, seeing no further questions. Thank you very much, Nick.
Thank you.
Next up is the Uptown Vision Committee. Welcome, Rami Saeed.
Good evening, Council. So as many of you know, my name is Rami Saeed, and I am the chair of the Uptown Vision Committee. So to start off, we're going to say that rapid transit is here. While it may not be operational in terms of a visionary planning mechanism, it's as here as it really could be. And it's really kind of the cornerstone of what a lot of uptown planning has been developed around. So that is why we are going to say it is here. So things to note is that Uptown has brought in about 1,000 new jobs, and we are having a new emerging data district. And what we mean by that is we have things like Communitech's new data hub at the old police station in Uptown Waterloo. That is a new driving force for a lot of new types of data development in terms of companies coming into our core, and with them bringing a lot of new jobs. Also, we have to note there's about 5,000 new people coming and moving into Uptown Waterloo, which is a significant amount of people. There's about 2,760 brand new units being built now, or that have already begun to be occupied. Things that we have really focused on is the evolving culture and landscape of Uptown Waterloo. Uptown Waterloo is no longer just King Street. It may have been true about 5 to 10 years ago, but now Regina has become a huge hub for new businesses, as has Caroline and many of the surrounding streets around that as well. So Uptown is not a simple structure anymore. It's kind of growing truly by the day. Something that we're really proud of, and a program that the city has kind of put in place with partnership with the BIA, which is something that has really started to spur some development, is the new CIP program, which is the Community Improvement Program. This is a program that was a fantastic vision by this council and with many other partners to help kind of bring this older uptown to look a bit more modernized and kind of get it into the future with a bit of support. A lot of uptown businesses are owned by small one-off families and stuff like that, and they may not have the money to kind of build a brand new facade, but if we want to keep uptown evolving and becoming the place people want to be, it was a good initiative to kind of support them and kind of getting us there. With all these programs and the development happening, we have seen a massive increase in restaurants and bars and different entertainment facilities, and with that coming into 2018, hopefully, with a large portion of streetscapes being done in the uptown, we'll have some new patios to kind of line our streets and make them truly feel lively instead of just a corridor of vehicle traffic. Also along those lines is the new variety we have in Uptown with different types of cuisine, with different types of retail, a lot of nice new boutique style stores that kind of cater to specific sects versus just being a generalized facility. And I do think it's something that Waterloo should be very proud of. So who's our team? I would like to recognize Mark, who's sitting directly behind me, who's a member of our team, but we are entrepreneurs, we are developers, we are programmers, we are advocates for transportation, for vehicles, for pretty much the works. We represent the BIA in Waterloo, we represent this council, and we're pretty much what Waterloo is, all kind of brought together with different views and different standpoints, and we make it work, and it's something that we are truly proud of. So Uptown Vision 2025 is a plan that was developed years ago, and it was built on 5 key stones. The first of it being build, and it was building a quality new buildings and new vision for the Uptown. Live, making this a safe place for you to bring your families and to kind of go about and enjoy our Uptown core. Move, transportation, walking trails, bike trails, everything that this council has done a fantastic job focusing on over the past few years. Work, as we discussed earlier, with the 1,000 new jobs coming into the core and focusing on different sectors. And play, so our entertainment districts that are growing. A lot of the new events like our Thursday nights in Waterloo Town Square, and a lot of the other things that many of these other committees are working on to make Uptown truly a destination location. We've been trying to incorporate our official plan, and we have a lot of new objectives moving forward. So some of the things we've done this year, one thing that we'd like to mention is we did a walking tour. While it doesn't sound like very much, we kind of said, we're kind of discussing what's happening in Uptown. It doesn't really make much sense if we actually don't go and see it. So we went to places like the Shopify building that was talked about earlier. We stopped in at the old Legion building and kind of saw what was going on and actually got to go inside and get a tour of their vision of what Uptown is and what it could be. I can say personally that it has greatly affected my vision of Uptown and kind of helped me develop where I want to see it going. Because there's a lot of great ideas in Uptown, and while they may not all line up perfectly, none of them are wrong. They're all just different. we kind of advocated for Caroline Street. So when we talk about buildings like the Circa building, for example, their back end at one point was just going to be a loading dock. Through discussions and advisory, they've actually decided to activate both sides of the street, so they don't only have frontage on King Street. Caroline now becomes an active street. With a growing uptown, that's really important, because if we have a bunch of dead zones, that street will never become active and nobody will ever actually want to walk down it. So those are things that our committee has advocated for. And growing onto that is a seamless uptown, so whether you're uptown, midtown, or downtown, we want it to be one big corridor that's kind of welcoming to everybody, with no large gaps in the middle that kind of make it feel like the city has ended. And we're starting to see that between the Bauer building and uptown now, where we're with the new red condos and everything, it's starting to kind of feel like one. While it's all in the same BIA, for a while there, it did feel like two separate destination locations. So council recommendations, when we talked about the Communitech Data Hub, we were in largely support of what the council did and kind of how that all came through, and we think it's a fantastic thing. And when it comes to zoning bylaws, our committee may stand a bit differently than how city staff are. I will take this moment to kind of advocate one last time before it goes to council that we do believe that with $1 billion investment in infrastructure for LRT and everything, maybe we should review our parking strategies one more time before it kind of gets passed. Just going to plug that in there quickly. General Uptown bylaw amendments. So when we're talking about tech uses and everything like that, kind of discussing letting kind of people start to build an uptown, not just have office space and everything along those lines. Again, support for the data district. Waterloo Walk Vision, kind of championed by Melissa Durrell up on the stage there, is something that we truly believe in. And while there's a lot more work to do, and we realize that, it's something that we are going to continue pushing forward with, because we think it'll really change the uptown as a whole and be a cornerstone for the city. Updating our Vision 2025 priorities. When this document was drafted, LRT wasn't really a thing. And if you look at the draft, it includes nothing about transportation, protected bike lanes, or anything like that. So while a lot of it is still relevant, it needs a bit of a refresh to kind of say, where has Waterloo been going and how can we continue going down that line? Development projects we looked at, the John King proposal, that's kind of new on the table now. The 115 and 117 Herb Street, as mentioned before, the Circa building, which is one that I'm truly excited to see that building. It has already sold out, which is a phenomenal statement for Uptown in terms of the growth, because that is not a small structure to begin with. The Waterloo Memorial Rec Center development, the movement of ARC and everything, is something that we're very supportive of as a committee, and think that will truly help to kind of bridge Uptown and make it more of a destination point. We've also, as stated before, looked at the old Legion building and many other ones kind of in the area. So zoning comments, as stated before, active street, things kind of along those lines. User coordination, regulation. Just going to wait a second, let them have their little combo. Sorry. So reduced parking, as stated before, and much along those lines there. So what kind of is our committee? We're envisioning the future impact of LRT. So we're saying, what is it going to be? Like, by all means, we can walk up and down the streets and kind of see all these developments. But what does it actually mean, and how do we want to see our city evolve around it? If we just kind of let it all happen, sure, it may be great, but if there's no actual planning and decisions going within that process of what the vision of Uptown is, it's kind of a moot point. Envisioning the growing startup community is another big thing. As all these tech companies come in Uptown, how do we make them feel like they're involved in the Uptown culture and lifestyle? How do we make them feel like they're part of the Uptown and that they want to be here? Ensuring that we're incorporating their needs and making sure they want to stay, because tech has the finances that if we don't work with them, they don't necessarily need to be here. So as a city and as a planning group, it's our job to kind of bridge those gaps with all sectors and make sure that we are the most welcoming city we can be, because that's really what we sell as a city. We sell a family, a livelihood, a community. So some of our priorities are placemaking. So again, as stated before, with like making Uptown the place you want to be. We do have a bit of a focus kind of growing right now with the retail sector. Across the world, there has been some struggles, and we do think that Uptown, while we've received some of it, we do think that we have an opportunity to kind of build from where we are today. So we've looked at things such as micro retail locations versus some of these larger facilities that can kind of cater to stores like Loop Clothing, who are very specialized and specific. They don't need thousands of square feet, but if we give them the right kind of space, they'll come to Uptown, and there is the shopping to support it. Job growth with data, everything is, again, transit. Easy zoning rules that facilitate investment is a big one as well. I think during elections, many people will talk about the red tape that is in any city and everything, and by all means, we can't just open the floodgates and let things happen. But moving forward with a lot of our bylaw, we've already talked about making Uptown accessible and making people want to invest their money here, and that it's not going to cost them so much to be here that it drives them to another community. And I think we've been doing a good job moving forward with some of these priorities. And then the last thing, again, is streetscape activation, which is recognizing that the Uptown is growing beyond King Street and making sure that with new developments and new plans that we're incorporating those things to keep those streets accessible and lively moving forward and not just loading zones. So effectively the goal is a people, place, destination, somewhere you want to work, live, go with your family, and spend your money and have fun. So that's kind of our goal with Uptown there. So before I go to questions, I do want to also take a quick moment just to recognize what many of you know has been the struggles in Uptown Waterloo. While we all recognize that construction is a necessary thing, our infrastructure needs to be upgraded, the streets are going to look absolutely beautiful, we also recognize that there is a bright future for Uptown, and we do want to give credit to the many people that work at the City of Waterloo. And I especially want to give credit to Melissa Durrell, who has, through thick and thin, put her neck out for the Uptown core, whether it's been being on the street shouting with us or just going to business. Without an advocate like her, I think this process would have been a lot worse. And to me, it's something that generally goes unrecognized, and I don't think it should. So on behalf of me and the rest of my committee, I'd like to say thank you, Melissa. So, any questions?
Thank you, Rami. Questions for Rami before we continue? Councillor Henry.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Rami, for a detailed presentation and your abundant enthusiasm, which I know you're personifying on behalf of your whole committee and not just yourself. As you look at, I'm intrigued by the refresh to the 2025 vision, and I hear what you're saying in terms of what wasn't there when this was done before, and therefore what needs to be there as you're looking at it as well. I'm wondering the extent to which your committee's been thinking about who Uptown is for in terms of who can live here, who isn't living here. We talk about attracting investment, but I know we hear increasingly from folks around the region and not just in the region, but in many places, about some of the growing divides that come from some of those investments. So I'm wondering the extent to which your committee is cognizant of the broad range of people or not that would and wouldn't be included in that vision, because I know we've got many policy tools we've got to think of, but I'm looking out to committees like yours to give us some insight into how we should conceive of what Uptown is and for whom.
Absolutely, so that's a fantastic question. So we've looked at it in two ways. We've looked in one way about just doing a quick refresh to the current plan to kind of modernize it a little bit, but we've also just started to discuss doing a full new replan. So step one for us is going to be take the 2025, let's make it modern for the next few years, and over the next council term with the new committee, let's focus on completely rewriting it. Our committee represents a lot of different groups of people, and in terms of whether it's affordable housing or anything of that sort, it is something that has always been top of mind for us. We recognize that, myself as an entrepreneur, income's not always there, let's be honest. So to me, I understand that some of these new condos, which are about $2,000 a month for rental, they're not realistic for me, but I'm still somebody who lives uptown and can afford to, because the city has kind of put initiatives forward in working with our developers to kind of make things accessible. And our committees as well have kind of looked out for the greater goals of Uptown Waterloo. And at no point do I think that your transit hub should be inaccessible to the people that need it. It's kind of a useless tool if only people who have $1 million houses and cars live beside your transit, because they're probably not going to be taking it most likely. So to have a core, it has to be everything, and that's what we want Uptown to be, is a little bit of everything.
Thank you. And before I turn over to Councillor Durrell, I would say that one of the lenses I would use for Uptown vision in the future is the independent business. That's really at the heart of our community. So many of the businesses here are independent, and to that, Capri Salon is celebrating their 60th anniversary tonight. 3 generations running that salon right here in Uptown, and a great turnout, great treatment of clients. When there's something going on, there's plenty of free parking on Regina Street, and people are able to find it and get there no problem. And with that, I'll turn over to Councillor Durrell.
Thank you, Mayor Jaworski, and thank you, Rami. I don't often blush in council, so that was super kind words, and totally want to push them back on this committee too. It's inspiring to be around such visionaries. And as we all know, and Rami kind of mentioned the struggles in Uptown, it's really easy to get bogged down in, and as we should, of what's happening today. But part of our job is to be looking at Waterloo through, the 20-year-old Google glasses of what the city is going to look like. And keeping that as part of our focus. And I think it's a really interesting committee, and I love how you the slide where you had sort of where everybody kind of fits into into our ecosystem of our community, the fabric of our community, because I think it's so important. It's such a diverse group, and we do have really interesting conversations when it comes to development and landscaping and trees and green space and all of those wonderful things that make Uptown so special. And I think I would like to say to the committee, and if you're on the committee, stand up. How many of you guys are there here? Just us? Just one? Okay. Oh, yes, two. Awesome. Because, thank you very much, because Uptown needs champions very much today, but also for the future. And so thanks for taking the time and putting in the effort to make it so special. So thank you.
Thank you, guys. Cheers.
Thank you. Next up is the Waterloo Economic Development Advisory Committee. Grant Gingrich, Chair. Welcome, Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. For the benefit of the gallery, I'm going to quickly run through a few slides on who we are and what we do and sort of our approach. And then we'll focus on a final slide for a review of committee priorities and where we see ourselves heading. Here you can see our overriding objectives, our economic well-being and quality of life here in Waterloo. And our priorities for doing so are attracting and retaining businesses and jobs. In doing this, we need to stay focused and clearly delineate roles. And this is kind of a simplistic view, but here we look at economic development activities between the city and between the region. And I say it's a simplistic focus. In the city, it's sort of an internal focus where we're ensuring that the city of Waterloo is competitive, attractive, and a fun place to be. And example activities would include land utilization, manufacturing strategy, talent attraction, brownfield development, arts and culture. And if we were to use an analogy for this, it's sort of building the home, if you will, the economic development home. That's an analogy that's used by the department. Looking at regional economic development activities, it's more externally focused, marketing the region of Waterloo to prospective employers and opportunities typically outside of the region. So trade missions, Toronto Region of Waterloo Corridor, two-way all day go. Initiatives like that. And back to the analogy where Waterloo, the city of Waterloo is building the home, the region is finding people to live in it. So that's sort of that delineation of responsibilities. Drilling into the Economic Development Advisory Committee itself, we're a large and active advisory committee. We are, it's worth pointing out, volunteers, and like many people here tonight, the committee is giving of their time. Broad sector and skill coverage gives the committee real depth and an ability to reach into the community and drive collaboration. And collaboration is a big approach. There's a few pictures there, but if you look at the graphic in the middle, this is not to imply that the world revolves around the WEDAC committee, but it does point out the various sectors that we try to reach out to, that we try to partner with. Historically, the city's had a traditionally collaborative approach with business and government and post-secondary institutions. And it's this approach which has delivered breakthrough results for the city and is largely responsible for a lot of our prosperity, much of our prosperity today. Collaboration between these three is a common economic development focus, but a new school of thought, and one the committee has embraced, also adds arts and culture to the collaboration mix. And the simple logic being that you cannot succeed at attracting business or talent unless people want to live here. And so Waterloo must be competitive, attractive, and a fun place to be. We're not competing with Kitchener and Cambridge, we're competing globally. And there are many examples of cities globally that punch above their weight. Austin, Nashville, Edinburgh come to mind. And what's driven that ability to punch above their weight is because of the arts. So heavily focused arts communities. Looking ahead, and I'd like to spend some time on this slide, priorities for the committee. So, as I said, we're an active committee, and we often break into subcommittees to focus in on specific issues. In the past, these have included issues such as brownfield development, LRT station area planning, regional development charges. 3 priorities we want to focus on now looking forward are strategy, economic development strategy, talent attraction and retention, and comprehensive zoning bylaw review. So first, talking about strategy, sort of an ongoing aspect of this is providing feedback to staff and to council on economic development goals as laid out in the strategic plan. And more specifically, recently the Phillip and Columbia business area has been branded as the Idea Quarter, where academia, industry, and people collide. The committee would like to assess the employment area branding model and look at assets elsewhere in the city and see if it can be replicated to build economic viability elsewhere. With talent, the challenge is to ensure that we attract and retain a talented workforce so employers can locate here and can grow here. University grads would be an obvious segment, and there are several segments that we need to look at as a committee. And as discussed on the previous slide, economic development can enable arts and culture, but arts and culture can enable economic development too. And lastly, with zoning, zoning is something that affects every single business, property, and property owner in the city. And city staff are currently drafting a new zoning bylaw. It's a significant undertaking, and we have a subcommittee reviewing the draft bylaw, which is now on its 2nd draft. And obviously, our view is going to be through the lens of economic development, and ours being just one voice of many stakeholders that staff and council will hear from on this. The graphic shows you have the city's strategic plan, and you've got the zoning bylaw, which is the city's tool to implement the strategic plan, and you have economic development, which are informed by both. And the goal simply would be to ensure that all 3 are consistent or complementary to one another, and that we are able to maintain the competitiveness, economic viability, and prosperity of the city. So 3 priorities going forward: strategy, talent attraction, and zoning review. So to sum up, the committee is comprised of an energetic and talented group. We take a collaborative approach and can help build partnerships. Our focus is on the long term, on lasting, sustained economic growth. And we have our 3 priorities, and we look forward to continuing to work with staff and council. And lastly, a shout out to staff, in particular. Nancy Gale and Justin McFadden are very talented at what they do. They care a lot about Waterloo, and they're a pleasure to work with. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Grant.
That group and who are involved. Could you outline a little bit of some of the people who are members of that and what you're trying to accomplish with this group?
Yeah, we have representatives from, we try to get all sectors or most sectors of the local economy. I'm calling up my own notes here so I don't forget any, but manufacturing, small business, the development sector certainly, technology, finance, insurance, banking, retail. We have representatives from all post-secondary institutions, and of course municipal staff and elected representatives as well. And when comprising the committee, not only do we look at the areas where folks are coming from, but also the skill set that they bring to the committee. So entrepreneurial, financial. We have folks with legal experience, environmental, and global business experience as well.
Every month when we meet, the room is absolutely jammed with people, who play important roles in the community, getting together and mashing up ideas. And from my perspective, when I attend the meetings, I'm so interested in the idea that we are focused on trying to keep all these university students who come from around the world and try to keep them here, this talent retention piece. And can you give us any ideas on how the community, your committee, is helping the community reach that goal?
I think a key focus would be on arts and culture, as we have mentioned, and that's not to say that economic development or the committee is looking to, drive some activity. But I think it speaks to that collaboration piece and who we can collaborate with. And there's the Arts and Culture Committee here tonight and other arts and culture representatives in the community that perhaps we can partner with and start to create the sort of vibrant community where students feel they can stay and get maybe some of that exciting lifestyle they can get in Toronto or other global cities for that matter. And it doesn't have to necessarily be large cities we're comparing ourselves to, as I mentioned earlier.
So, Grant, to get economic development wrong, we just cannot do that. So I'm confident with your leadership and the large group that you have, we can plow forward on these really big issues. Thank you for all your work.
It's a talented group for sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Grant. Next up, Sustainability Advisory Committee. Welcome, Matthew Thiessen and team.
So we thought you'd do it a little bit different and have a few presenters tonight. So thank you for having us, Mayor and Council. My name's Matt Tyson. I'm the chair of this committee.
I'm Cheryl, and I'm a full member of the committee.
And my name's Maria, and I'm one of the student members of the committee.
So we thought we'd go through, as a new committee, just a background similar to how we talked a little bit about the definition of economic development. Sustainability is a word that's been used a few times tonight, and so it means something slightly different to everybody. So we wanted to talk a little bit about sustainability, talk a bit about the committee information as a new committee, some of the early projects that we've worked on, and some of the directions that we're setting. So to start with that definition piece, it's actually quite interesting because when I talk to people in my day job on what sustainability means, they usually say it's either recycling, planting trees, or saving the planet, are three common responses that I get. And so we'll talk with that third one a little bit. And this is an image, some of you may have seen it before. It's actually one of the most widely reproduced images in human history. It's called the blue marble. And it was the first high-resolution color image that we had of the world from space. Back from Apollo 17, way back in the early 1970s. And the significance for this is it was also at the dawn of the environmental movement where we were starting to kind of catalyze our understanding of our place in the universe and some of the challenges that we face.
However, we have a fundamental problem, which is that our footprint extends far beyond what a single planet can provide. If every person on Earth lived the same lifestyle as Canadians, it would take 4 3/4 planets to provide for us, which is what the first image is showing here. Another visual is this one, which is our current global average. It's about 1.6 planets needed to sustain us at our current rate. This highlights that we still need to reduce our footprint, but also that there are incredible disparities between countries.
There's a couple of different definitions that are used for sustainability, and the most common one is providing for the needs of current generations without limiting the ability of future generations to meet their needs. Sustainability is often thought of through its three pillars: environment, society, and economy. So when we think of sustainability as a concept, we should think of these three independent systems: the natural environment, our social health institutions, and our economic activities. And it might be tempting to think of the environment as only part of economic success or social well-being, but it's actually the foundation of these.
I think this understanding of what sustainability means is emerging at the global level in something like the Sustainable Development Goals, which clearly articulate at a very high level that sustainability is dependent on all three of these pillars. We often focus on economic development as a driving force for the improvement of human well-being, which it certainly is, but that's conditional on social networks and systems that provide that workforce that's actually able to be productive. Things like health and well-being, zero poverty, education as being foundations for that. And those are all in turn driven by a robust and healthy biosphere and natural environment. Climate change, water degradation, land degradation being some of the really critical global challenges that we face. So we see this international kind of coalescing around some of these action areas in the SDGs, in things like the Paris Agreement on climate change, and now percolating down to the national level. These are national in scope, but they're also being taken up by cities through networks like ICLEI and the C40 on how a large number of municipalities are integrating these goals into their ongoing planning.
So the official mandate of the Sustainability Advisory Committee is to advise Council on matters that promote corporate and community sustainability by advising on the implementation of the city's sustainability program and strategy. So more specifically, our 5 main objectives are to provide advice and assistance on sustainability issues, to connect the dots between environment, society, and economy, to pay attention to the big issues that are happening locally and around the world and what they mean for Waterloo, to support the city's sustainability program and strategy, and lastly, to communicate with other advisory committees, citizens, groups, organizations, and staff to support the sustainability mandate.
So this is a list here of our committee members. We have Matt as chair, Mark Whaley as our council rep, Anna Maria as our staff, and we also have administrative report. And new to the committee structure, we have the student roles, which help highlight the intergenerational nature of many sustainability issues.
So some of the projects as a new committee that we've started working on this year, we're providing some comments to the zoning committee as part of the ongoing bylaw review. And we wanted to make sure that as a fairly foundational piece of our community fabric, that things like climate change were factored into those zoning recommendations and outcomes. We've also looked at a movement or an opportunity to partner with the Smart Fueling Initiative, which is looking at labels on gas pumps in collaboration with the fuel industry, which is an exciting opportunity to increase the literacy on how we use fuel in the community. And we are looking at preparing a report to Council regarding the long-term community climate action target and plan that is currently being developed collaboratively between the 3 municipalities and the region of Waterloo. And so some of the vision that we're bringing to the city, we've heard a lot of ways that this ties into many of the other advisory groups, and I think 3 pieces that we kind of add as a value as a committee is, again, reinforcing that long-term decision-making and long-term thinking. And again, the bylaws are a great example of that, where the decisions that we make now will either lock us into a certain trajectory for decades to come. It's really hard to go back and change stuff that's been built under the current way of doing things, rather than try and doing it right from the beginning.
We also want to ensure that we are thinking holistically about economic development, social well-being, and environmental integrity, as we mentioned before, since failing to address any one of these will eventually impact all 3.
It's also important to ensure robust networks of stakeholders, since sustainability isn't solely an environmental issue. There needs to be connections and coordinations across the city, within the organization, and also with the community. So we have 2 examples to show how the City of Waterloo is moving in the right direction towards social, economic, and environmental sustainability. So on top of its heritage value, the Seagam lofts also are an example of sustainability. And so it's redevelopment on old industrial land. It has a smaller space footprint created by vertical growth. The buildings are close to major transit networks, community services, and parkland. They also create higher economic value than vacant land would, and also more aesthetically pleasing. And all of this will attract talented workers to the city. And while this type of development is encouraging, it's also important that the city remembers to consider affordable housing to make the city accessible for people of all economic backgrounds.
Another really good example is the Evolve 1 building, which is currently being built in R&T Park. It will be a creative innovation space. It will attract talented employees. It's going to be close to major transit routes such as the ION, and it will have a multi-use street level that will spur social interaction and community, and perhaps most interestingly, it will actually have a net positive building design, meaning that it will create more energy than it uses.
So I think in conclusion, reflecting on the nature of cities, we are by our nature about sustainability. It's providing services in the long run. We're not planning just for the next 5 years. We're planning to be here indefinitely. And so I think this is nothing probably new that the city hasn't talked about or looked at before. But we look at the time we're in right now, and there are major global movements and convergences of forces that are driving some of this to encourage action. But it's really cities where it happens for the vast majority of the action that we're going to be taking. So as we move forward, we encourage the City of Waterloo to think long-term and to be bold, to be ambitious.
Thank you, Matt and team. I actually have a question for Maria. So it was this term of council where we were looking at all the applicants and we decided, wow, there's a lot of student applicants, but one of the problems is that they'll go off on co-op work terms, or they'll have midterms or away during the summer, and it just makes it tougher for them to participate in the committee to function. So as maybe you could share some of your experience of how you think this project that this term of council put into play of having student representatives is working for you.
So since I wasn't in co-op, that wasn't...
And I'll just ask you to speak closer to the microphone.
Yeah. Since I wasn't on co-op, that wasn't a huge issue for me. And since I am a non-voting member, there is no requirement on how many I'm allowed to miss
Right.
meetings, which has been good with my other time commitments. But I think it's really incredible that students are getting the chance to be involved in this, especially in a committee such as the Sustainability Committee, which is all about intergenerational change. So, yeah, I think it's an incredible opportunity for students. And
well, don't forget to put it on your resume. Well done.
Yeah.
You do very well. Okay. Questions for the Sustainability Committee before I turn it over to Councillor Whaley. Councillor Doyle.
Through you, Mayor Jaworski, thank you for your presentation. One of the things that I've always was hoping to, well, I should say, one of the things I'm hoping to enlist your support from your committee on is often during our planning committee meetings, we have buildings that come forward, and I think that part of the future is us thinking at development in an entirely different way. And just recently, we've had some older buildings that are looking to put in electric for electric cars, and doing it at the beginning is way easier than doing it after the building is built. And so I wonder if it is part of your mandate or if there's interest from the committee to actually look at some of the developments that are coming forward and perhaps give some environmental or sustainable suggestions to not only the council but to our staff, looking at it through that lens.
To be honest, I'm not sure whether we have the capacity internally at this point to do specific development reviews, but we have made comments on things like that as, for example, part of the bylaw review, because that is an opportunity for the city to influence some of those policies in new development or in redevelopment as it happens. And there is a lot of momentum happening, for example, at the provincial level on things like building code changes. And right now that's exclusively within provincial jurisdiction, so it is hard for municipalities to engage with some of that. But there's been that kind of beginning of a discussion on whether that can be given more municipal empowerment to move above and beyond building code. And so there may be an opportunity down the road as those developments are proposed and come forward that the city does have a bigger role to play in encouraging specific facets of that development to be more sustainable or more efficient or whatever we might look at. I think Evolve 1 is a great example, again, of a project where we are bringing together academic, private sector, and municipal stakeholders on something that is quite visionary, but they're not looking at it just from the environmental perspective. They're looking at it from that long-term business case that even if you take the environmental pieces out of it, we're doing this because this is a building that over the long run was actually going to cost the same or less to run than what a conventional building was. And so that's that mindset that we really want to be driving forward.
Whaley.
So Matthew, for the last 25 years or longer, it was enough for the city to have an environmental committee, to have a group of people focusing on environmental issues, bringing them forward to council. But it seems that these days it's not enough. And you and your committee are recommending a triple bottom line, not just the environment, but the economy, and for social issues. Why the change?
I think it's impossible to separate the three of them. If you want to have long-term economic growth, it's very hard to drill it down to a municipal level, but I think it's quite clear globally with the issues that we face that if we degrade the natural environment, it's not going to be conducive to global growth. It's not going to be inclusive to social well-being. And we see, even in our own communities, that often the people that are most impacted by poor environmental planning or poor decisions that have a long-term consequence are those who are least responsible for actually creating the problem in the first place and the least able to actually deal with that. And I'm speaking specifically of minorities and those that are less economically fortunate. So these are issues that are dramatically or significantly connected. And if we try to treat them as distinct issues, we actually do ourselves a disservice. You'll notice the graphic that we had of those three interweaving circles. That's a systems way of thinking of this. You'll see some versions of sustainability, that's a Venn diagram. And the reason that I don't like those visualizations is because you can almost think about, well, we'll pull the one piece out of it and we still have the other two. And that's actually not true. As we look over the long term, they all have to be there. And we have to position them in a way that's actually true to the way the systems are developed.
So, Mayor, I have to tell you, under the leadership of Anna Marie Cipriani, I've been on every committee probably in the city over the years. Probably sat in just about every committee in the city. But this particular committee is unique in my experience, exciting in my experience. One of the reasons for that is the three leaders we have here, their collective age is exactly the same as mine. So you think about that demographic and the gender of the demographic, and the fact that half the committee are made up of students. It's a very dynamic moment in the history of our city. It's a really changing point because, I said, from this historic lens I have, having been through it all and being a part of this experience with you guys, moving away from just environmental but into deeper thinking about what sustainability really means. It's an honor for me to be working with you guys. You're doing a remarkable job. Thank you, Anna Marie, for digging in and trying to figure out a roadmap for us, and we're still working on that. Congratulations, we got a lot of work to do, and I couldn't be more delighted to be working right alongside you.
Likewise, thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Next up is the Age-Friendly Waterloo Committee. Jenny Flagler-George, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. To begin, an age-friendly lens is embedded in the City of Waterloo strategic plan. Likewise, the action items of the committee, including items like the development and now annual update of the senior housing directory, are aligned to the City of Waterloo's key priorities, including building a strong community and focusing on corporate excellence. The committee's work also aligns with the Council's approved older adult strategy. The City of Waterloo is a part of the World Health Organization's global network of age-friendly cities and communities, and we're very proud of that membership. The Age-Friendly Waterloo Multi-Agency Committee is guided by the 8 domains identified by World Health Organization to better address and adapt city structures and services to the needs of people of all ages. And in fact, the membership of our committee is made up of representatives from each of those 8 domains, including things like respect and social inclusion, up to transportation. Along with that, the representatives from our committee come from expertise ranging from planning to researchers from the University of Waterloo, including professors as well as graduate students, and as well as experts who come from work in elder abuse prevention, as well as culture. The World Health Organization membership in the World Health Organization for our committee is contingent on an annual report submitted to the World Health Organization, who has again recently approved the committee's submission for 2017. Providing a few examples of our achievements for the past year. The 8th annual Mayor's Age-Friendly Forum presented to a sold-out crowd this past year. The forum on an annual basis provides an important opportunity for the mayor to be able to share key wins and outcomes from the previous year's committee based on residents' feedback as to what needs to be accomplished. The following year provides us and the mayor with an opportunity to say what has been done so that our residents can see what has been done based on that feedback. The topic for each forum is driven by the previous year's feedback and serves as a key theme for the committee's action for that year. For the past 8th annual forum, we focused on age-friendliness through diversity and inclusion. The forum is directed mainly towards an audience of residents. Also, the committee facilitated a joint lunch and learn targeted to service providers, mainly health and social service providers. And for this, we worked in partnership with the Elder Abuse Prevention Council of Waterloo Region, focusing on the topic of inclusion as a strategy for the prevention of elder abuse. That provided us with an excellent opportunity not only to reach out to health service providers, to offer them some tangible tools and resources for using inclusion as a strategy to prevent elder abuse in the work that they're doing, and also an opportunity for us to develop a more solid partnership with a council working at the regional level that works towards similar goals. The committee prepared and submitted a grant application in this past year through the federal government's New Horizons program, which was designed to develop an intercultural and intergenerational learning program. Focusing on the intercultural aspect, picked up on what residents said that they would like to see from the past 8th Annual Forum, and the intergenerational aspect focused on what residents had told us that they would like to see from the year before that. So it really combines two areas of focus that residents of Waterloo said that they would like. Looking to the year ahead, the 9th Annual Mayor's Age-Friendly Forum will focus on lifelong learning, and that's coming up November 24th. Focusing on this aspect of lifelong learning, we've also, as a committee, submitted 3 abstracts that were accepted to the International Federation on Aging, where we will present some of the key activities that the committee has worked on over the course of the last number of years. The committee will also now be responsible for the senior year selection process and making a recommendation on that to council. In closing, I'd also just like to acknowledge the work of my fellow committee members, as well as the fantastic support provided by Jim Bowman, who's always a great help, and of course the ongoing support and participation of the mayor.
Thank you, Jenny. Questions for the Age-Friendly Council, or Age-Friendly Waterloo Group? Seeing none, I'd like to, well, one, great thanks for the team, because I think one of the key things is that what really is really instilled in me is that an age-friendly city means age-friendly for everyone. And I think that's what's exciting is at the next Age-Friendly Forum, we're actually having a group of over 24 Blue Veil students participating and presenting there as well, because I think that's really something that we see here. And also with the demographics, the latest census shows that for the first time ever in the city of Waterloo, the 65-plus crowd is larger than our 0 to 15 crowd. Now, we still have a very youthful city with our largest demographic being 20 to 25 because of our universities and college systems. But, you know, I think what really makes me proud is that this is we have some world-class leadership right here in our own community, and people who are really excited about, you know, putting us on the global stage and trying to make this a special place for the young demographic, for the older demographic, and for all the students that we have here. So thank you very much for you and the team for all your support, and I'm proud to be a member of the committee as well. Thank you. Next up, and I think this is sort of a lesson for people, isn't it, Julie, where if you put in a report, you actually go second. The reports of committees. So thank you, Paul McCone, for submitting a report. And now we have 2 groups that actually submitted reports who get to go next. So welcome, Paul McCone, Waterloo Park Advisory Committee.
Good evening. Over the past year, the Waterloo Park Advisory Committee of Council, or WPAC as we call it for short, has continued to identify and develop initiatives towards the implementation of the 2009 Waterloo Park Master Plan. We'd like to take the opportunity to tell you about our year. Last year, we spoke of improvements to the Central Street parking lot and park entrance. The lot itself is now complete, and a trail is in place to separate pedestrians and cyclists from tennis club traffic. Work on the Central Street entrance feature has yet to be completed. We hope to see that happen soon. Now that conditions upstream have been tended to, an addendum to the Silver Lake Environmental Assessment is underway to diagnose problems and provide solutions for the park's watercourse. Once this EA addendum is complete, we'll be able to better plan for Laurel Creek, Silver Lake, and the aging infrastructure that surrounds them. The festival entrance to Waterloo Park is near to completion with the installation of the long-awaited harvest table by artist Ted Fullerton. Visitors who arrive at the park via Father David Bauer Drive have immediately made good use of this practical, functional, interactive, and thought-provoking piece of public art, enjoying a meal while they contemplate the eternal tension between squirrel and nut. The Waterloo Public Library, unveiled the harvest table as part of their Picnic in the Park event in August, with some help on the day from the Friends of Waterloo Park. In September, a Waterloo Rib Fest was held as a sort of trial run of the kind of event that the festival area will one day support. Throughout the 3-day event, the place was full of happy people enjoying barbecued ribs, roasted corn, deep-fried onions, and a selection of craft beers. Construction has begun to rework the entire 900-meter length of the Central Promenade, one of the main routes into and through Waterloo Park. The Central Promenade runs across the park from Canada's most renowned corner at Caroline and Herb to the new Waterloo Park Laurier LRT station. Ground was broken in July for the twinning of the bridge across Laurel Creek in anticipation of the multi-use trail and dedicated cycle lane that will make up much of the length of the Central Promenade. The Central Promenade's route includes 3 LRT crossings, which will strengthen east-west connections across the park for pedestrians and cyclists and make it easier to access the park in its entirety. Along the route, it will be possible to stop, rest, and reflect on one of the many comfortable benches that will be installed. The chosen model, Victor Stanley RB28, is also starting to appear uptown, so there will be a sense of visual continuity as the park spills into the city and the city leads into the park. Adjacent to the park, it's exciting to see sidewalks and multi-use trails appearing along Seagam Drive, a tangible demonstration of the city's continuing commitment to support multiple ways for people to get where they want to go. The long-awaited improvement to the Central Promenade is perhaps the largest and most extensive project in the park in its 125-year history. When complete, it will serve the park and the city well for its next 125 years. The Friends of Waterloo Park, the group involved in implementing elements of the Waterloo Park Master Plan that are currently without capital funding, have begun public engagement with a series of weeding, planting, and mulching events at the EB Farmhouse. As the Friends transition from WPAC subcommittee to volunteer organization, recruitment will soon be underway to populate the variety of functional teams that the Friends have identified. It's been a busy year in Waterloo Park. Next year, WPAC hopes to look at wayfinding strategies within the park, detailed planning for the festival area, and pedestrian access at and across Father David Bauer Drive in order to maintain a welcoming, pedestrian-friendly atmosphere. We'd like to finish our update with thanks. We'd like to express our gratitude to Central Promenade Project Manager John Griffin, whose planning and daily updates have made it possible for people to continue to use this most heavily traveled section of trail in the region. WPAC and the Friends of Waterloo Park extend our thanks to Environment Stewardship Coordinator Peggy Stevens for help with Friends planting events. They would not have been as great a success without her help. We offer thanks to park staff for their day-to-day maintenance, painting, and upkeep. We recognize the importance of maintaining our existing resources well, particularly in the context of the changes underway. Finally, the Waterloo Park Advisory Committee would like to thank Council for their continuing vision and support of WPAC and Waterloo Park, maintaining our jewel of the city and adding new facets so that it will continue to sparkle ever brighter in its sterling setting. Thank you.
You have a way with words, Paul. Excellent. Thank you. Questions for Councillor Henry? Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Paul, to see you here again, and you always bring excellent visuals to help highlight, I think, for all of us in this room, just the extent to which work has continued quite rapidly across all facets of the park and will continue to do so for the next couple of years. Question I had for you, as the Friends of Waterloo Park spin out and start to do even more fantastic work, you mentioned gaps in capital forecasts and plans and ideas, and I see in your report some recruitment of new members will enable active population of various initiatives. Can you tease a little bit of that for us in terms of where the Friends may spend their time in the next 12 to 18 months?
Would you care to speculate, Dave? We have David Ndougal with us this evening. He's our crossover member.
It is dangerous to give Dave the mic, I know. So.
Thank you. For the next little while, we're going to be focusing on background, needs assessments, things that where we're going in the future. We're a friend raiser, we're a fundraiser, and we just want everyone to use the park as best they can.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, I'll turn it over to Councillor Durrell.
Actually, I'm going to just turn it back really quickly to Paul. Do you want to introduce the committee and the audience?
Sure. We have with us this evening Dave McDougall, you've already heard from him, Helen Bergstrom, Ross McKee, and Peter Weatherup is sitting in the back row there. Anybody else escaped my notice? Andrea Basler is our staff support right now.
And
friends.
friends.
And
Doug Bowden. Doug Bowden.
On your last name.
Bowden.
Bowden, of course. Doug Bowden is one of our friends of Waterloo Park as well. So we've got our Waterloo Park Advisory Committee here and a fair proportion of our current friends of Waterloo Park here as well.
Thank you. Awesome. Awesome job. Thank you for always inspiring me with your words. It's one of my favorite things about when you come up with a big idea, because you can sell it with words, my friend. It's amazing.
Storytelling is the most powerful means of putting an idea from my head into yours.
What does that say about me, eh? So there's so much going on in Waterloo Park, and it's such an exciting time to be on this committee. And I want to thank the committee members for showing up once a month and giving it their all, because boy, do we ever get a lot jam-packed. We've never finished a meeting on time once. I'll just tell the rest of council that it's always
that may have something to do with the chair, though.
And so, you know, everyone continues to show up, and Friends of Water, the Friends component of this, I think is so important, because we just don't have enough tax dollars to go to making that park what it truly can become. And so I appreciate the effort and hours that are going into that, and I look forward to seeing that committee really flourish and start to do some incredible things. When you think about all the development that's going on around Waterloo Park, that park just becomes more and more special every single day. So thank you for being its champions. That's my word today, champions. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And next up, the Waterloo Advisory Committee on Active Transportation Annual Report, Ann Crow, Chair. Welcome, Ann.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, and guests. So I'd like to thank all the committee members, but in particular Janice Moore, that's hiding back there, who's been very active on the committee. And Councillor Diane Freeman is very committed to active transportation. We have a new staff support, Louise Finlay. Phil Hewitson is Director of Transportation, is very supportive of active transportation initiatives. And Anita's our staff support. I'd really like to thank John Griffin, who's been the impetus for much of what I'm going to talk about tonight. He's moved on to other things temporarily, but he's been very instrumental in much of this. And Natalie was our summer intern, and a lot of this would not have happened without a lot of hard work from Natalie. So our purpose is to advise Council on existing and proposed modes of transportation to develop a safe, sustainable, and accessible transportation system. And I have to say, I went through the city's strategies, and we hit every one of your strategies. So what have we done? When I went through this, I couldn't believe what we've done in the last year. It's amazing. So we are working towards completion of the high priority network, which was established a few years ago. And the idea is that you should be able to go from any part of the city to any other part of the city with a safe, enjoyable way of getting there on foot or by bike or by other means of active transportation. The red line is the Trans-Canada Trail, and that is, apart from that, some of it's now under reconstruction. It's complete. The Waterloo is the yellow one. We're working hard on that one. And I have something to say about the Walter Bean this year. So one of the things we work on is to encourage safety and connectivity. The Walter Bean Trail in Waterloo is now complete. There's a multi-use trail from one end of the city to the other. The picture on the left, I went out there a few days ago to take this picture, and you'll notice that I believe is a 300-year-old elm tree that almost put the spike into our multi-use trail, but they came up with a boardwalk that goes around the tree so that we've preserved the tree and we got our trail, so it's phenomenal. We want to encourage safety and connectivity. the picture on the left is actually a region of Waterloo initiative, but because it's a regional road, but they put in an island. You can see how busy, that picture was taken on a Sunday morning. You can see how busy Weber is and how intimidating it would be to cross both lanes. The island isn't ideal, but it's light years ahead of what it was before. We have a counter, pretty much where I was taking this picture, there's a counter, and I'm really hoping that next year we'll see an increase in the number of people using the trail, because now it's so much safer to get across Weber Street. The other one is the Lexington Road multi-use trail, which I rode the other day, and that is phenomenal too. And once that's finished, you'll be able to get across the bridge safely without riding on the sidewalk, which was kind of the default before. And it just keeps going. The city is doing so much. So on the left, we're putting in protected bike lanes on King Street, which I'm really looking forward to. And on the right, I have to say that we were really pleased with the design of the promenade. It's actually two promenades. There's going to be a commuter's promenade where people who are getting from one side of the park to the other to get to work will be able to ride right on through without running over toddlers who are ambling along on the other part of the park, where you'll be able to just mosey along at your own pace. We had over 1 million people counted as of October on our counts, and obviously the construction of the LRT has really impacted the Waterloo, which is our park counter, which is our busiest part. But I'm sure once that's all finished and connected, we're going to see an explosion in the number of people using that. And we did a lot of volunteering this year. We volunteered at a lot of community events. We're trying to educate people on safe cycling. We hand out bells and lights and maps, and we were at the supported the bike valet at both the Jazz and the Buskets Festival. We attended open streets to talk about bike maintenance and safety. Volunteers fitted almost 200 helmets on children at the Children's Safety Village. We've appeared at neighborhood events. We participated in Cycle to School Day. We handed out bike lights at the Bright On campaign in the public square and at both universities. 317 students in grade 5 were educated about cycling safety. And this program is phenomenal. And not only does it take kids out and teaches them how to ride, but if they don't have a bicycle, it provides them with a bicycle. That's a picture of Waterloo, which looks very wintry. Janice has snow on order for next year. Councillor Freeman took us on a Jane's ride from the farmers market to Uptown and back, which was really great. We had a great day, and it's an opportunity for the committee to look at what are we doing that's good and what still needs to be done. To celebrate Canada's 150th birthday, we did a bike ride over 2 days from the north end of Waterloo region to the south end of Waterloo region. It was phenomenal. And it really can be done. If anybody wants to know how, email me and I'll send you the map. And last year I presented on the Grand Trail project. You'll be happy to know we're now incorporated as the Grand Watershed Trail Network. I'm now the co-chair of that project, and we've had phenomenal support from municipalities up and down the watershed. We're still going out to consult with them and with other organizations, and I'm hoping in the next 2 or 3 years you'll hear a lot more about the Grand Watershed Trail Network. So what are our priorities? To finish getting the high priority network done, improve the connectivity, improve safety, collaborate with other regional municipalities in connectivity and mapping. We really need to increase our volunteer capacity. I think we've taken on a bit too much for the members of our committee, so we need to get more people volunteering at all these events, because they really are very popular, and I think that's part of adding to the culture of this and the sustainability and a lot of other things that other committees have talked about. Continue participating in the Grand Trail project. And our final priority is we have a Share the Road Silver Award. Only Toronto and Ottawa so far in Canada or in Ontario have the Gold Award, but we have to work on all 5 E's to bring ourselves up to the gold standards. So that's engineering, education, encouragement, enforcement, and evaluation and planning. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne, for your passion and leadership. Do we have questions for her? Councillor Joel.
Through you, Mayor Jaworski, thank you very much for your report. I'm just curious about this gold award, if you want to go back one slide. A rumor I heard, and so I'd love to know if it's a fact, that the King Streetscape that will have a segregated bike lane is one of the things that will sort of be the tipping point into the gold. Is that true, or?
I think that goes into the engineering piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to work on all the aspects, and I think we have moved very much from painting bike lanes on roads. It's now understood that the vast majority of cyclists will not ride on a busy street in a bike lane.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to get, there are places like Copenhagen where more than 50% of the population commute by bicycle every day.
Mm.
To get there, you have to provide people with infrastructure and protected bike lanes, multi-use trails. That's the way to go, yeah.
Montreal Mayor won on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I have to say, looking around Waterloo region, I just read a book called Happy City. If you haven't read it, read it.
Yeah.
But you can really see where Waterloo is going, and we're really moving in the right directions in terms of urban development, and this is a big piece of that.
Thank you. Councillor Henry, please.
Thank you. And Anne, this isn't a question. Always appreciate the enthusiasm you can bring. I hear it on my right all the time. It's nice to hear it on my left as well from the podium on behalf of your committee. But as you were talking about Councillor Freeman's ride from the market down, I just thought it was a good opportunity to plug the Public Information Center and Consultation Center that's happening later this month on the 30th of November at the Albert McCormick Arena from 6 to 8 to talk about the Farmers Market Trail up along the rail line in a couple of phases. I know that's one of the projects that Louise is working on now. But I've plugged myself in to go. I'm very keen on seeing some of that. I can't imagine how many of your committee members would just be thrilled to be able to go up and down that trail and come back with some fresh products every Saturday and some Thursdays. So just an opportunity to plug, given you're talking about the network, that would be a realignment of the number one priority in a very straight and clear way.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I'd say we also owe a great debt of gratitude to TD Bank for their support of Waterloo Park and the second bridge project, which will also separate cyclists from pedestrians and keep it safe and have a great promenade. So a debt of gratitude to them. Councillor Freeman, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thank you, Anne, for your presentation. It's interesting, speaking of what we're doing here in Waterloo, we actually have been leaders across Canada in this. It was right here, it was Scott Nevin who helped to rewrite the Bike Friendly Community Awards program for Ontario, which I think someday we'll see it expand to all of Canada. And those awards exist because of the relationship with the bike manufacturers and the League of American Cyclists in the U.S. And Waterloo was first to get an award, being silver, and we will get gold. And it would be really awesome if, when you look at the fact that Boulder, Colorado is platinum, and we have more kilometers of cycling infrastructure than they have in Boulder. Per capita, we are really doing great work here. And I was thinking, Anne, before your presentation, how many other presenters spoke to the active transportation and the importance of the accessibility it's creating. So Rami spoke to it on his Uptown presentation. We heard about it in the Waterloo Park presentation. And we also heard about it in the Sustainability Advisory Committee presentation. And it links into that piece of being a destination of choice for employment. And when we see that once we start tracking these uses, how many people are using this network, it's staggering. We didn't track the Spurline Trail. We built it, and with the City of Kitchener, put a counter down. And what did we have in the first 4 months? 250,000 people. So it really is true, that notion of if you build it, they will come. And thank you for raising the flag about volunteers to help with bike valet and to help with the CAN bike program in our schools. And so I'm looking forward to all of the great work that is coming next year. I know that there's more people on our committee that aren't here tonight, but a shout out to Janice, because she did take a leadership role in organizing Winterloo and a lot of the scheduling of people. And someone that I'd like to recognize too is Natalie Wennick, who isn't with us. She's hopefully going to come back someday, but she did really great work too with the committee in that transition period between John and Louise. And then the stable hand at the wheel being Phil in all of this has helped keep a lot of continuity in the work that we're doing. So we're a really fortunate committee, and I appreciate that you've taken a leadership role as the chair, and I just can't wait to see that promenade. I really can't. I can't wait to ride it.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
And just for clarity, Natalie is no longer with us because she's a student and has left.
She's doing work in climate change. And so the work that she was doing here feeds in, and so we're hopeful that she'll come back.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you, Ann.
Thank you.
Next up, we're in the short strokes now. There are some committees that do not report, and more of our licensing one. And there's a full report on that for council. If there's any questions from councillors on that report. Seeing none, that was for information only. Next up is Brad Witzel prepared a report on the KW joint service initiatives. And is there any questions on that? Seeing none, I would like to thank the team for reinvigorating the joint service initiatives with Kitchener and creating the 3 great projects that we've had so far this year on customer service, better after-hours servicing for our citizens, grants, getting more money that our citizens send to Ottawa and Toronto back here, and also on cycling infrastructure, which we just heard a lot about there, for the 5 new projects that we'll have in the next year. So thank you very much for doing that. I think citizens expect Kitchener and Waterloo and the region all to work well together, and this reinvigorating that group is very helpful. So thank you, Brad. Thanks for your report. And does somebody want to enact some bylaws? Councillor Henry does. Councillor Freeman does. All those in favor? That's all of us. Anybody want to adjourn? Councillor Veith, Councillor Durrell. All those in favor? That's all of us. Thank you all.